Emily Harper did not expect the question to come on such a quiet night, the kind of night that felt ordinary enough to be forgotten. Yet it arrived with a calm that unsettled her more than anger ever could. Because Daniel Harper had always been gentle, always careful with his words. And as they sat in their Boston kitchen with snow brushing softly against the windows, he spoke as if he were discussing the weather. Telling her that he had been thinking about love, about time, about how people could stay together and still drift apart without realizing when it began. And Emily listened with a tight chest as he admitted that their marriage was stable but tired. Not broken, but worn thin by years of responsibility, routine, and quiet sacrifices. And he said he knew she smiled less now, that her laughter came late and left early, that he sometimes felt like a companion rather than a partner, and before she could defend them or deny it, he said he did not want to trap her inside a life that slowly erased her. Which made her heart pound because this was not a fight she could win with words. And when he mentioned Michael Reed, his old college friend from Seattle, Emily felt the air change, because Michael was not a stranger. He was a name Daniel trusted, a man known for kindness and honesty, divorced but steady, and Daniel spoke carefully, explaining that he believed Emily deserved to feel wanted again, to feel chosen, even if that feeling did not come from him. And the idea landed like a quiet storm, shocking but strangely calm. And Emily laughed at first, a nervous sound that did not belong to her, thinking this had to be a strange test or a joke spoken too late in the evening. But Daniel's eyes were steady, filled with fear and love at the same time, and he told her he was not pushing her away. He was opening a door and asking her to look, just to think, nothing more. And Emily felt torn between gratitude and disbelief, because she had never asked for this freedom. Yet some hidden part of her recognized the truth in his words. The unspoken distance that had grown between them through years of shared schedules and polite affection. And as the night stretched on, the kitchen clock ticking louder than it ever had before, Emily realized that Daniel was not offering permission. He was offering honesty, and that frightened her more than betrayal would have, because it meant she could no longer hide behind routine. And when they finally went to bed, Daniel fell asleep quickly, exhausted by courage, while Emily lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every pause. Wondering why the name Michael Reed echoed in her mind with a curiosity she did not want to admit. And as she listened to the quiet breathing of the man she loved, she understood that nothing had happened yet, but something had already changed. Because the question Daniel asked was not about another man. It was about whether she was brave enough to face what she had been missing, and in that still moment, Emily realized that love could be generous and painful at the same time. And that the choice placed gently in her hands would not fade with morning light, but would grow heavier, demanding to be answered. Emily arrived in Seattle telling herself this was not an escape, but a meeting. Not a desire, but a conversation. Yet the moment she stepped into this small cafe near the harbor and saw Michael Reed stand up with a polite smile and kind eyes, she felt a nervous warmth she had not felt in years. And Michael was calm in a way that felt real, not charming or rehearsed, and he greeted her like an old friend, even though they had barely met before, asking about her flight, about Boston, about Daniel. And that alone made her relax because there was no secrecy in his tone, and as they talked, Emily noticed how easily words flowed, how Michael listened without rushing her, how he laughed softly at her dry humor, and they spoke about simple things at first. Work, weather, city life. But soon the conversation deepened, moving quickly into feelings neither of them planned to share, and Michael spoke honestly about his divorce, about how love can fade quietly when people stop seeing each other, and Emily felt her chest tighten because his words mirrored her own thoughts. And as they walked along the waterfront with cold wind brushing their coats, Emily realized she was not drawn to him because he was different from Daniel, but because he was present in a way she missed. And she reminded herself that Daniel knew she was here, that nothing about this meeting was hidden, Yet her heart still beat too fast when Michael asked questions that made her feel visible. And when he said she seemed like someone who carried more than she showed, Emily almost cried. 'Cause no one had noticed that in a long time, and the hours passed quickly, filled with shared stories and thoughtful pauses, until they parted politely with no promises and no plans. But that night alone in her hotel room, Emily felt restless. Pacing between the window and the bed, replaying Michael's voice, his kindness, his respect. And she hated herself for how much it mattered, because she had come looking for clarity and found confusion instead. And when Michael sent a simple message asking if she was okay, she stared at her phone for a long time, knowing that answering would cross no rule yet still open something dangerous. And she finally replied with honesty she had forgotten she was capable of, admitting she did not know what she felt. And as she lay awake listening to the city outside, Emily understood that she had not done anything wrong. Yet she had discovered something she could not ignore. A quiet longing not just for another man, but for a version of herself that felt alive. And in that moment, she realized the trip had already changed her, because Michael Reed was no longer just a name her husband trusted. He was now a mirror showing her everything she had been missing, and she did not know how to look away. Emily returned to Boston carrying a weight she could not set down, because nothing had happened in Seattle that could be pointed to or explained easily. Yet everything inside her felt different, and she told Daniel the truth without soft edges, describing the conversations, the walks, the way Michael listened. And Daniel sat still, hands folded, absorbing each word with a quiet pain that never turned into anger. And when she finished, the room felt smaller, filled with things neither of them could fix. And Daniel said he had asked for honesty and would not punish her for giving it. But the distance between them grew clearer, sharper, and the days that followed moved fast and heavy, filled with work, silence, and long looks that said more than words, and emails from Michael arrived slowly, careful and respectful, never asking for more than she offered. Yet each message pulled Emily deeper into a truth she had tried to avoid, because she felt understood in a way that now felt necessary, not optional. And one night Daniel admitted that watching her struggle was harder than imagining her leaving, because it showed him how much of herself she had lost while trying to keep their life stable. And when he told her that if she chose Michael, he would not stand in her way, Emily felt both relief and heartbreak, because love should not require someone to step aside. And still he did, and with that painful permission echoing in her mind. Emily flew back to Seattle, telling herself she needed clarity, not courage, and when she met Michael again, the air between them was honest and tense, filled with things finally allowed to exist, and they talked for hours in his quiet apartment. Not touching, just speaking, laying their fears open, and Michael admitted he cared for her but would not be the reason she destroyed her life, and Emily admitted she was tired of pretending she was whole when she felt hollow. And when she finally reached for his hand, it was slow and certain, not rushed or reckless. And what followed was not about desire but connection, a shared understanding that felt deep and human, filled with emotion and care rather than impulse. And later, lying awake beside him, Emily did not feel guilt the way she expected, but clarity mixed with sadness, because she understood that this moment was not a mistake. It was a result, the end of a long emotional journey she had ignored. And she cried quietly, not because she had crossed a line, but because she knew there was no turning back to who she had been. And the next morning she left early, walking through the city alone, knowing the hardest part was still ahead, because the choice she had made was not about choosing one man over another, but about choosing truth over comfort. And when she returned home and faced Daniel again, she saw in his eyes that he already knew, and she told him gently what had happened, without detail, only meaning, and Daniel closed his eyes as if steadying himself. Then said that love sometimes means letting go, even when it hurts more than holding on, and they sat together in silence, mourning something that had once been good, and in that, Moment Emily understood that love could be generous, painful, and brave all at once, and that the decision she made in Seattle had changed her life forever. Even though the future remained uncertain and fragile, Emily and Daniel did not argue after the truth was spoken, because there was nothing left to defend, only something to accept. And in the days that followed, they moved through their home like careful strangers, sharing space but not pretending, packing memories into quiet moments, dividing books, photos, and years with respect instead of anger. And Daniel told her he did not regret loving her, even if love had led them here. And Emily held that sentence close because it was the kindest goodbye she could imagine. And when she finally left Boston, the city that had held her marriage and her younger self, she did not feel free or broken, only honest, and she settled for a while in Vancouver, choosing a place that felt new but gentle, where the air smelled like rain and beginnings. And there she learned how to sit with herself again, waking early, walking alone, writing thoughts she had ignored for too long, and Michael visited sometimes, never pushing, never promising more. Then presence, and their connection remained careful, built on respect and shared understanding rather than urgency. And Emily appreciated that because she was no longer running from pain. She was learning from it, and some nights she missed Daniel deeply. The comfort of shared history, the safety of knowing someone completely. But she did not confuse missing with regret, because she knew they had reached the end honestly. And one evening, while standing on her balcony watching the city lights reflect on wet streets, Emily realized she no longer felt defined by the choice she made, but by the courage it took to face herself. And she understood that Daniel's question, painful as it was, had been an act of love, not surrender, because it forced truth into the open, and she hoped someday he would find a love that filled him the way he deserved, just as she was slowly learning to fill her own life with meaning. And when Michael asked her once, gently, where she saw herself going, Emily did not rush an answer, because for the first time she did not feel the need to decide everything at once, and she told him she was learning to choose herself without fear. And he smiled, accepting that as enough. And as seasons changed and time softened the sharp edges of heartbreak, Emily came to understand that love does not always end with anger or betrayal. Sometimes it ends with gratitude and distance. And sometimes it changes shape without disappearing completely. And though her story had begun with a question she never expected and a path she never planned, it led her to a quieter strength, deeper honesty, and a future she could finally step into without pretending, knowing that the most important relationship she had saved was the one she had almost forgotten, the one with herself.